now while we're waiting for the sky to dry, I can actually start work on the sea. I'm going to start with the similar colours that we used in the sky. I'm going to do a lot of wet into wet. I'm going to let my colours blend on the paper. So I'm going to try to keep them as pure as I can in the palette. So I'm going to be using some Winsor blue, some French ultramarine, and those will merge wet into wet. And my final secret ingredient is a little dash of indigo and a touch of cobalt violet. So let's start with the Winsor blue green shade. I'll just run that across here, and that's a bit strong. So into the water, and immediately we lose a lot of that strength, a lot of that intensity. And drop down a little there. Notice how my brush marks are different. Here, I'm actually doing horizontal brush marks. In the sky, I was dancing around and sort of forming the clouds with the brush. Here, I'm letting my brush marks mimic much more the sort of the sea itself. So they're all horizontal. Quite wet. We go back into the clean water, add some French ultramarine. That's lovely granulating blue. And we've got a staining blue and a granulating blue now. And we put that across. And the two blues mixing almost give us a sort of hint of purple, which is quite nice because it picks up some of the sort of purpley blues above in the clouds. Back into the Winsor, dragging it across, letting the colours mix and merge on the paper. You see that division there? Don't get it too stripy. I know we're at the seaside, but we don't want deck chair material. So a little bit more of that blue. Nice and wet. Straight into the French ultramarine blue. There we go. It's still wet. It's doing things for me. I'm not painting it. There we go. There we are. The reason for taking the horizontal marks, of course, is the way that the sea is sitting. But it also means if you missed a little out and you have some white paper showing through, well, if you're doing them horizontal, they're going to look like wave tops anyway. Just dropping some more ultramarine through there. And look, because it's wet, it's working together. Nice and strong. I like strong colours. I like days like this. I'm going to use a little bit of indigo. And watch the way this indigo pushes some of the other colours apart and away. Look. Sort of pushes the other colours. It's fighting for a little bit of territory on the paper, but it also gives you a lovely rolling effect of a soft wave, particularly if I pick up some of the masking fluid that I've run across here as wave tops and put the indigo below it. It's almost like a little shadow as the wave itself is falling over. There we go. There, for example, a little bit of underwash, a bit of indigo on top, indigo there, and we've left a light area. Doesn't matter. It's actually adding to the effect of the water. Now I'm going to use some cobalt violet. This is a lovely, exciting colour. Let's put this in here. Let's put it this side where we've got some French ultramarine. And once again, it pushes some of the colours apart. It's a colour that needs a bit of respect. You can see the way it pushes because it's so liftable that I have to make certain it's one of the last colours I put into the painting. Let me see how that's going. I'm quite happy with that. I want this bright, rich, exciting blue day by the beach. I'm happy with that. I'm going to let that dry. I'm now going to work on the distant headland. I'm going to use similar colours as before. I'm going to use a little bit of French ultramarine, some cobalt violet and a little bit of that Windsor blue that I've already mixed. I want to create a sort of palish, purpley blue. It's part of that phenomenon known as aerial perspective. It still sounds like washing powder to me, but it means that something in the distance is paler and slightly bluer. And if we can use that effect, that device, it helps to push that far headland backwards into the distance. Now I know I've got shapes here, but I'm not just going to fill it in with a brush. I'm not painting by numbers. I'm going to make certain my brush, my mark that I use when I paint, actually reflects the movement of the land, the way that the land falls down to the sea. So I'm not filling in, I'm still using this to describe the fall of the land. It means, rather like the sea, if I miss a little bit out, I'll have a white mark that leads the eye from the top down towards the water, down to the bottom. So let's just see what we've got going on here. There we are. So I'm just moving that along. So there we are, a little bit there. Slightly darker at this edge. It's a little bit too dark. So let me show you this. If it's too dark, too strong, take the excess off on some kitchen roll and just use the brush to soak up some of the colour you've put down. Look, exactly as I want it now. Now I'm going to work on the nearer headland here, near a little bit of land, and I'm going to do an underwash. I'm going to do an underwash in some blues and some greens, and when that's dry I'm going to go over the top of that and put some field boundaries in, maybe some trees. Nothing in great detail, but something that helps to bring that closer to us. So this time I'm going to use a particular colour of mine which I really enjoy using, called green gold. Now this is one of those colours that's very, very strong when you first apply it, but it actually can lose up to about a third of its strength when it dries. Just clean a little bit of palette there. Clean water into that green gold. Now I will vary this green as I move through the painting. I don't want the same green or the same strength of green all the way across. Landscapes aren't like that, fields aren't like that. There's subtle variations, and it's picking up on those subtle variations and incorporating it into the painting that makes it look more exciting, more realistic, more interesting. So let's just put a little bit of blue. See the brush stroke again? I'm still moving it down. And now let's add a little bit of that sky middle colour. Just change it slightly. Let's add some pure French ultramarine. Let's add some more of that green to it. And I'm mixing it on the paper, moving it through. There we go. There's my brush mark again, rolling the headland down towards the sea. You can sort of straighten off at the bottom, and while it's still wet we can drop other colours into it if we want to. Let's go to the end nearest to us. Let's just watch what happens when we drop some colours in here. Rather like the centre of the clouds, they have a life of their own. They're painting some interesting effects for us. If I drop some colour into the bottom part of that damp wash, watch the way it bleeds up. It's almost as if the little bushes are growing there for us. That's rather interesting. I like that. A little bit more here. Now once again, I don't want to use the hairdryer to dry this. I want it to dry naturally. So I'm just going to be patient and let that dry before I put the second layer on. I'm now going to put my second coat onto the headland just to put a few more details and make it a little bit more interesting. I'm going to use some of the existing colours in the palette, plus I'm going to use some burnt sienna. Let's just make a nice darkish green using that lovely green gold and the French ultramarine. I'm twisting the brush, I got a nice point. And let's just introduce some field boundaries and some trees on top here. Vary it, like I said, with the underwash so you don't have the same colour all the way through. There's a nice field there. And don't forget, these are fields at a distance. You're not going to see gates, fence posts, sheep, cows. You're just seeing shapes. There's a broad field going down to the water's edge. And can you see, just by putting that detail in, not precisely, but just putting the indication, it brings that closer to us. It seems to jump forward. A little bit more of the green, I think, here. That's nice, I like that. Now you can't go to the coast without going down to the beach, so we need to put a little bit of a beach in. So I'm going to use some burnt sienna, which is a nice warm brown. And I'm just going to run a little bit of colour just where I've left a slight gap here. There we are, so there's a nice beach for the kids to play on. And also a little bit of warmth in that foreground to the beaches there. Going to add, I think, just a tad more blue to that end of the here. I just think it needs something slightly darker. All paintings that have light in them need some darks. You need to have that range. You need to have light and dark. Too often watercolours fail because the tonal range is too narrow. If you want to make something punchy with impact, you need to have the light and the dark. I'm going to have the light here because I've protected the paper. So I'm going to put some darks over here. So I've got the dark and the light, the contrast, the width, the breadth. Now I'm going to wait for that to dry because I'm ready to take the masking fluid off. But I've worked very hard to protect it. I've worked very hard to protect the paper, very hard to keep the paper absolutely clean, crisp and white, so we get that lovely light effect. If I'm not careful, if I've got damp or wet areas, my finger might slip and all that hard work is being lost. So this is the time to have another cup of coffee and just wait for this to dry before we take the masking off. I'm now ready to take the masking fluid off. I'm going to do this very, very carefully. We've worked, as I said, very hard to keep the paper clean. We don't want to ruin it at this stage. I'm often asked about removing of masking fluid and how I go about it. I know a lot of people wrap their finger with some kitchen roll. Some people use soft putty rubbers. I much prefer a clean hand or a clean finger, and then as I'm pulling the masking fluid from the paper, I can feel how the paper's reacting. I find it more sensitive. But I don't go madly at it. I rub it away gently. I don't reach the point where if I've got a sort of massive masking fluid, as I've seen some people do, they pull it from here and then wonder why the paper tears. Let's treat it with respect. Let's just roll it down nice and gently. And if you have a massive masking fluid, come in all directions till it meets in the middle. As I say, you've worked hard. You don't want to ruin the painting at this point. I know that the masking fluid comes away easily from the the blocking fluid, from the paper that I'm using. But just a word of caution, always check the watercolour paper that you're going to put the masking fluid on. I've mentioned it before, but it is important. And look at the way we're beginning to create some of that lovely light in the landscape there, light on the water. So I'm now going to just spend the rest of my time removing this masking fluid. I'm just coming to the end of the removal of the masking fluid now. There's quite a mass of it here, a lump of it. But once again, I'm still not pulling. It's coming off naturally. There it is. You don't want to pull that because it will tear the paper. Make certain that all the masking fluid is off. I've discovered to my cost that if you don't remove all the masking fluid, you can end up, and sometimes it takes years, with the masking fluid becoming sort of quite an unattractive orangey brown colour, which tends to ruin an otherwise decent painting. But look at that, the light here and the dark there, the brilliance of that comes to it. I'm now going to put a few little shadows under some of the waves that are falling here, areas like here. I'm looking and I'm going to search out for some of the masking fluid here that might be wave tops. Here, 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 and put a little bit of colour underneath. I'm just going to use the Winsor blue-green shade. It doesn't have to be too strong. I'll just link a few, kind of like that. Take them across here. I'm not going into the distance. I'm just adding a little bit of interest there. Put a few marks here. Now, as I'm coming towards the end of the painting, I'm looking for any areas that might need a little bit of attention, a little bit of a tweak at the end just to finish the painting off. Now, I like some of these marks, but I'm noticing I've got an area here that looks a little bit empty. So what I'm going to do is to add a little bit of colour there. I'm going to use this blue, or this Winsor blue, across there. See my brush is sort of dancing across. Nothing too precise. There we are. So I'm going to use a mark that comes from outside the painting in, so it gives me a nice little sweep into the painting. So, clean water, don't forget the goldfish. And let's just do that. I'm almost rehearsing the stroke before I actually get my brush to touch the paper. Resting my hand here, moving it across, I think about there. So now just add that across. That's filled that area quite nice. A little bit of rogue masking fluid there. Yeah, that's a little bit there. Now, I've directed you to this area here, and I want people to look. My clouds are taking you there. I've got an arrow here. So let's actually give you not just one reward with the light, let's give you two. Actually, when I did this painting, or made the drawings for this, it was off the coast of South Devon, and it was race day, and there were some little dinghies out to sea. So let's put a little bit of a mast in for the dinghy here. I'm going to use some permanent rose, and I'm going to use a little bit of the burnt sienna, a little bit of cad orange, and I'm just going to put a very simple sail in. These boats are some way offshore. You're not going to see the captain, you're not going to see the name of the boat, you're just probably going to see the mast. You might not even see the hull. So let's make certain that we don't ruin it at this stage by putting too much information in. Thinking about my thirds, it would be nice, I think, if I had it round about here in front of that distant headland. Because it's stronger, it will push the distant headland away. And it's red. Look at the effect the red has on the painting. Suddenly it brings that area to life. We have the Fellows of the Royal Photographic Societies, FRPS. In fact, one of them taught me at college many years ago. FRPS, Fellow of the Royal Photographic Society. I think it stands for Find Red Patch Somewhere. Because if you do, you'd be surprised how much energy you can bring into the painting. Even the great John Constable used to do that. Now, I want to put another couple of boats in. I don't want to make them as strong as this first one. I still want them slightly warm. So I'm going to use a little bit of the burnt sienna with a little bit of French ultramarine. I'm just going to dirty it slightly. And I'm going to put the other boats possibly going into the horizon. Not too many. I think I have a couple more there. And that at this stage is all we're going to do. Now, I'm quite happy with that. Let me just assess if anything else needs. Well, yes, I think it does. There's a little bit of a gap in the sky here. I think I need to put some more information here, a little bit more detail there, just to take the eye towards these boats. So let's go into our sort of middle sky colour that we still have left in the palette. I'll just put a few little clouds, I think, here. Dance in the brush. That's better. That's taking some interest towards those boats. That's more like it, and I think we'll just do a little bit on the other side here. Well, that's a bit strong, so let's just soften it. That's kind of nice. I think I'm going to stop at this point, and I'm just going to take off the masking tape. So let's take the masking tape off and see what we've got. Carefully peeling the tape away from the painting. We know it's low tack, we hope it's low tack, but if we pull into the painting, we're likely to tear it. So let's be sensible, let's pull it away. And we get that instant border with it, which helps us to assess the painting more accurately, because we've got a bit of distance between it and some of the marks around the edge. So let's have a look at what we've done. We've produced this lovely painting of the light sparkling on the water off the coast of South Devon. And where you got to look? Where I'm telling you to look. Look at the way I've constructed it, with the way these clouds force you to look at this point here. And I don't reward you once, I reward you twice. Not only have we got this lovely sparkle on water, but we've got this little splash of red there that creates attention. I've even got an arrow over here pointing it to you. I've really enjoyed painting this. Why don't you go home, get your paints out and have a go yourself. Until I see you the next time, enjoy your watercolour.